And welcome to this April update of the Yarslow Model Railway. And I know it's hot on the heels of the last update, but whilst I'm in isolation, a lot's been going on, so I thought I would take the opportunity to produce this video and tell you what has been going on. When I left you, the branch had turned green. We'd got the flock base and the static grass in place, and I'd worked out where most of the buildings were going to go, loading gauges, signals, all that kind of stuff, and it was all looking quite pretty. There then came the need to break out the trees that had come off the old Yarslow layout, but in the box that they came in, they hadn't travelled at all well, and I faced the prospect of rebuilding or revamping 30 or 40 trees that left me somewhat cold. So therefore I decided to turn my hand to something else. I decided, after my partially successful attempt to build a platform at Butterbump, that I would build the platforms at Trinity Square, and so I made myself a little jig. 17mm sides, made out of 40 thou plastic card, a 40 thou plastic card top, and the sides themselves would be faced with Slater's 0474, that's the English Flemish bond, brickwork. The progress was quite quick. You can see here's the construction method with the supports across the middle, basically following round, starting with the loading bay and platform 4. My platform gauge wagon there just determines how far the sides are from the rails. Differing ramp positions for the ends of platforms 3 and 4, and you can see how the two sides are stuck together. Strengtheners on the back. It's a contact adhesive that sticks the brick to the plastic face. The supports here are floating at the moment, but there'll be similar supports on the other side, and then the two supports will be mech'd together to give it strength, and the sides will be fixed down to the board using some kind of no nails or its equivalent. The buffer stops for each of the platforms and the sidings are the cut down Hornby ones. I've cut the rails off the back so they look a bit more upright, and they don't look a million miles away from the sort of thing that you would see at a typical terminus. The control station here for the yard will be covered eventually by a building that will be the parcels or goods office for this side of the station. And here's platforms 1 and 2 under construction. You can see the sides and the supports cut and ready to go. And here's what it looks like from the station building end. Various weights holding everything in place while all the glue dries. And here is all the internals fitted to help support the top for both platforms 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That took about 3 days, but well worth it. Obviously you can't buy platforms to suit this sort of shape, so you have to make them. The sides have been painted, Humbrol mortar coloured first, and then a flat brush over the top with a dirty brick colour. Now, something very useful that I discovered was that this nominal 3x1, I think it is, or 3x3/4 timber, once planed, is the same height as the platforms, which means that I don't have to build a framework to go where the station buildings and the concourse is going to be. I shall simply frame it out using this timber, and that will save me an awful lot of time. The eventual top will simply be a contact adhesive fit onto the top of this framework. And having got started, there was no stopping me, so I carried on, and I've built the platform sides with the supports for Yarslow. Platform 1 on the far side, 2, 3 closer to the camera. You can see they've already been painted as per Trinity Square. This footbridge, which is the Hornby one, is a really nice model. I didn't realise until I got it out of the box how nice it was. Platform ramps, about 1 in 8 normally, running down to the brake van siding. and the two ends much as close together as I could get them naturally. Again, I'm going to use a timber inner fill here, which is why I haven't got supports all the way across. And I'm going to reuse this scale scenes building, although repaint it. As you can see on the left, I've started to repaint it. And the other end of the station, I've started to mock up some landform, and then this is going to be the overbridge across the end of the platforms here at Yarslow. I'm going to use the Wills Victorian cast iron bridge parapets, which look quite nice. And the ground form will go round the end and help to disguise the tracks as they disappear off scene behind the permanent way. On the top here there'll be a ramp running from the road down to the left, platform height for access to the station, and on the right there's going to be maybe a cottage or a village garage or a pub or something, and that's what it looks like standing on platforms 2 and 3. By now I was in landform mode, covered in polystyrene, as you tend to be when you're mucking around with it. So I started to lay out all the polystyrene bits for the branch embankment, and round behind the engine shed, and finally the bits to disguise the main line and branch exits off scene at the down end of Yarslow. I've kind of persuaded myself that a few low hills aren't the end of the world. In fact, there'll be bushes and trees on top of this rise to make the final disguise of trains disappearing. It just helps that illusion. And so after a lot of gluing and sticking and making mess, here is the polystyrene all stuck down at the up end, and here's the same progress having been made at the down end. You'll see I've stuck a bit more polystyrene on than originally planned, but that gives me a nice effect now of the branch separating from the main line. And here was the last job of the day, just putting that cork insert between the main lines, fleshing out the V's of the frogs ahead of ballasting, putting sheet material down around the local shed area under the water tower and the coal stay. That water tower may not survive, actually, I might find another one. And then finally I did in front of the coal siding. Here it is in front of the main yard at Yarslow, and in between the sidings, in front of the exchange sidings, and finally around the brake van siding at the end of the platform. And to celebrate my negative COVID test, I have been carving up some polystyrene and making a right mess. So the blocks that were stuck on here have now been carved into quite low shapes. You can see I'm not looking for a huge rise here. There's going to be a building there. I put some filler down as well, as you can see, to make the surface flat, and then the road will run through the middle. I've got the bridges to make. The abutments will fit there, and then eventually once the platform goes in, I will have the opportunity to produce the ramp down to platform level. So I've used a bit of filler to fill the gaps and the holes where the baseboard joints are, and I've carved the branch embankment, put a bit of filler down just to transition between the flat surface and the raised surfaces of the polystyrene. A nice smooth rise. Just behind this area, I think I might put a low wall just to separate the two areas off. But again, not looking for a great deal of height. There'll be bushes and trees on the top here to help disguise the exit, and that way I don't have to have an overbridge. A little bit of rise in the background behind the engine shed. And then you can see there on the right, I'm looking for a low wall to the right of the branch to separate the engine shed and the branch. And whilst all that paint and polystyrene and goo is drying, I've done a lot of the infill work at Trinity Square, and added sufficient cork to take these electric point motors and the ground signals, and I've done through the main line, past the entrance, and then up through the station throat and up to the platforms. Now here are those cast iron bridge girder pieces that I talked about. These are from Wills. They're 110 millimeters long. They're just about long enough to cover the double track on the curve here, and I will build bridge abutments on both sides, and there'll be a pair of them, one covering the main line and the other covering the loop line. And now that the ground has been painted my usual brown, bit of PVA and water mixed in with the paint, this is what I've got. You can start to see now how the ground is going to look. There's the first of the bridge abutments built to go over the loop line, and the ramp down to the eventual platform level. Platforms starting to go in and be fixed down, all pinned in place, carefully measured with gauges. And of course the best way of testing it is to make sure that the train runs through. And here's a method of fixing the platform in place using pins on either side of the upright, and then a suitable gauge that's notched to take the pin with the rails drawn on it, just to make sure your platform side is in the right place. One for the inner, one for the outer edges. The yard has been painted brown, and where I run out of brown, green, and where I run out of green, a horrible putrid mustard colour, but it's something to kill the white, and you can see as the buildings go back the sort of impression that I'm trying to make. And I'll finish with just a few photographs of the next project, and this is the point rodding. These are the rods that are running underneath the rails, some single, some triple, as you can see here, serving the points and the facing point locks. And finally, all of the cranks and bases for the cranks outside of the signal box. I started here by drawing a grid of all of the rods coming out of the signal box. Then there are 8 going to the left, and I think there are 16 going to the right, covering off the points, the crossovers and the facing point locks. And then each of the bases is stuck to, this is a piece of 15 thou plasticard, in a diagonal line in such a way that the rods all line up with each other. And there are 9 that come out of the signal box straight towards the camera that will go straight under the tracks and operate the points in Yarslow Yard. So that brings you right up to date with a change of plan, not a change of track plan, but a change of plan in terms of not completing the branch and then moving on and doing Trinity Square and so on. More just trying to get everything up to the same stage. So I shall carry on doing basic scenery and rodding here at Yarslow, building the overbridges. Then I shall go and do the bridges and the rodding, what little there is of it, at Trinity Square. And once I got to that point, I'll do all of the platforms across the whole layout, and then I'll start doing trees and scenery across the whole layout. So a change of plan, more in terms of the way I attack things. So if you want to stay tuned and see how I get on and all the mistakes I make and all the changes that I make, do hit the subscribe button, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, hit the notification bell so that the next time these videos are posted you'll be advised. I am desperately trying to work on some quick bites, although I've been concentrating very much on the layout and trying to get the layout going. That will continue. I'll squeeze a couple of quick bite videos in as well. I promised one on freight train formations. I've got one to do following on from the train head codes on signal box bell codes. So stay tuned for those and stay safe. I'll see you soon.